In the middle of New York City, where skyscrapers touched the clouds and streets buzzed with life, there was a small diner named Joe's Diner. It wasn't fancy or well-known. In fact, most people just passed by without giving it a second glance. But for one young woman, this little diner was her entire world. She worked there day in and day out, trying to make ends meet while holding on to dreams that felt almost impossible. This young woman had grown up in a tough neighborhood. Life hadn't been kind to her family. Her mom was sick, needing constant care, and her younger sibling depended on her too. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on her shoulders, but she never complained. Instead, she woke up every morning, ready to face whatever came her way. Alongside working at Joe's Diner, she picked up odd jobs here and there, cleaning offices late at night, babysitting kids on weekends, anything to bring in extra cash. Despite all the struggles, she always managed to keep a smile on her face. People who visited the diner often noticed how warm and welcoming she was, even when she looked exhausted. Her dream? To open her own bakery someday. Not a big, flashy one, but a cozy place where people could come to enjoy fresh bread, sweet pastries, and maybe find a little comfort in the hustle and bustle of city life. Every time she thought about it, her heart filled with hope. But right now those dreams felt far away, buried under piles of bills and responsibilities. One rainy evening, as the city lights reflected off wet pavements, the diner was unusually quiet. Most people preferred staying indoors during such weather. She stood behind the counter, wiping down tables and straightening chairs, lost in her thoughts. Outside, raindrops pelted against the windows, creating a soothing rhythm. Just as she was about to close up for the night, the door creaked open, letting in a gust of cold air. A man stepped inside, shaking off his umbrella before folding it neatly. He didn't look like someone special, just another person seeking shelter from the storm. His clothes were simple, jeans, a hoodie, sneakers, nothing flashy. If anything, he seemed tired, like he'd been walking around all day without finding what he was looking for. He took a seat at the counter, keeping his head low, avoiding eye contact with anyone. She approached him with her usual friendly demeanor. "Hi there," she said softly, placing a menu in front of him. "What can I get you tonight?" He glanced up briefly, offering a polite nod. "Just coffee, and maybe a slice of pie, if you've got any left." "Sure thing," she replied, turning toward the kitchen. As she prepared his order, she couldn't help but notice something about him. There was a sadness in his eyes, a heaviness in the way he carried himself. It reminded her of the countless nights she'd spent worrying about money, wondering if things would ever get better. Maybe he was having a bad day too. Everyone needed kindness, especially on days like these. When she brought his food over, she set it down gently. "Here you go. Let me know if you need anything else." He murmured a quiet thanks, staring into his cup of coffee like it held answers to questions only he understood. Something about him tugged at her heartstrings. After a few minutes, curiosity got the better of her. Leaning slightly closer, she asked, "Are you doing okay? You seem distracted." At first he hesitated, as though unsure whether to share. Then with a deep sigh he admitted, "I lost my wallet earlier today. I've been trying to figure out what to do next." "Oh no," she said, genuinely concerned. "That must be frustrating." "It is," he agreed, running a hand through his damp hair. "I hate feeling so helpless." Without thinking twice, she reached under the counter and grabbed a muffin wrapped in paper. "Here, take this. On the house. We've all had rough days. It's important to take care of ourselves." For a moment he looked surprised. Then, gratitude washed over his features. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "You didn't have to do that." "It's nothing." She shrugged, smiling warmly. "We'll get through this rain together." As he finished his meal and prepared to leave, he paused near the door. Pulling out a pen, he scribbled something quickly on a napkin. Handing it to her, he said, "If you ever need help, call this number. Please promise me you'll use it if you're in trouble." She accepted the napkin, puzzled but touched by the gesture. "I will," she promised, though she doubted she'd ever actually dial the number. Who was this mysterious man anyway? And why did he feel the need to leave her his contact information? After he disappeared into the rainy night, she tucked the napkin into her pocket, thinking nothing more of it. Little did she know, this chance encounter would mark the beginning of a journey she could never have anticipated. For now, though, she simply locked up the diner and headed home, unaware that her life was about to change forever. The days that followed the rainy evening at the diner passed like any other. The young woman returned to her routine, waking up early, working long hours at Joe's diner, and squeezing in odd jobs whenever she could. Life was a whirlwind of responsibilities, and there wasn't much time to think about anything else. But every now and then, as she wiped down tables or served customers, her mind would drift back to the stranger with the sad eyes and the napkin he'd left behind. That napkin sat crumpled in her apron pocket for weeks. She didn't pay it much attention at first. It was just a tiny scrap of paper after all. It wasn't until one particularly slow afternoon at the diner that she finally pulled it out. The ink had smudged slightly from being shoved into her pocket so many times, but the phone number written on it was still legible. Something about holding it made her pause. Who was this man? What had he meant when he said, "Call this number if you're in trouble"? Curiosity got the better of her. She decided to look it up online. Pulling out her phone during a rare moment of downtime, she typed the digits into a search engine. At first, nothing came up. Frustrated, she tried again, this time adding New York to narrow down the results. And then suddenly, the screen lit up with information. Her breath caught in her throat as she scrolled through article after article. The number belonged to none other than Alexander Drake, one of the richest men in the world. Her heart raced as she read more about him. He was a self-made billionaire who had built an empire from scratch. His name was everywhere, on news headlines, business magazines, even documentaries about entrepreneurship. Yet despite his wealth, he was notoriously private, rarely giving interviews or making public appearances. People often speculated about his personal life, but very little was actually known about him. She stared at the napkin in disbelief. That quiet, unassuming man sitting alone in her diner had been Alexander Drake. It seemed impossible. How could someone so powerful and wealthy end up losing their wallet and needing help from a waitress? And why would he bother leaving his number for her? For a while, she debated whether to reach out. Part of her felt silly, even considering it. What could someone like him possibly do for her? Besides, she didn't want to come across as desperate or opportunistic. But another part of her couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in her chest. Things were harder than ever lately. Her mom's medical bills were piling up, and her younger sibling needed new school supplies. No matter how hard she worked, it never felt like enough. Maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to catch a break. After hours of tossing and turning in bed, she finally made up her mind. Early the next morning, before heading to work, she sent a short text message. "Hi, Mr. Drake. This is the waitress from Joe's Diner. I wanted to thank you for your kind offer that night. I hope you don't mind me reaching out, but things have been really tough lately, and I'm trying my best to keep going." She hit send and immediately regretted it. What if he thought she was crazy? Or worse, what if he ignored her completely? Nervously, she tucked her phone into her pocket and tried to focus on getting through the day. Hours passed without a response. By the time her shift ended, she had convinced herself that he wasn't going to reply. As she walked home in the rain, umbrella-less once again, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Her heart skipped a beat as she fumbled to open the message. "I remember you," it read. "Thank you for reminding me of what truly matters. Please meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at my office downtown. We'll talk." She read the words over and over, unable to believe what she was seeing. Alexander Drake, the man whose face was plastered on billboards and magazine covers, wanted to meet her. Tomorrow, in his office. Her mind spun with questions. Why did he want to see her? Was this some sort of prank? Or was he genuinely interested in helping her? Sleep didn't come easily that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of that rainy evening in her mind. She remembered how lost he had seemed, how grateful he was for her small act of kindness. Maybe this was his way of paying it forward. Whatever the reason, she knew she couldn't pass up the opportunity. The next morning, she dressed carefully, choosing her cleanest pair of jeans and a simple blouse. She didn't own anything fancy, but she wanted to look presentable. Taking a deep breath, she boarded the subway and headed toward the address he had given her. As the train rattled along its tracks, she clutched the strap of her bag tightly, nerves bubbling inside her. When she arrived at the towering skyscraper bearing the logo of Drake Enterprises, she froze for a moment. The building gleamed in the sunlight, its glass facade reflecting the blue sky above. It was everything she imagined, a symbol of success and power. For a second, she doubted herself. What was she doing here? She didn't belong in a place like this. But then she remembered the kindness he had shown her that night. If he could trust her enough to leave his number, surely she could trust him too. Summoning her courage, she stepped inside. The lobby was breathtaking. Polished marble floors stretched out beneath high ceilings adorned with intricate designs. A security guard greeted her politely and directed her to the elevator. As she rode up to the top floor, her stomach churned with anticipation. When the doors opened, she found herself in a sleek, modern office space. Everything was pristine, from the minimalist furniture to the sweeping views of the city skyline. A receptionist smiled warmly and asked her to wait in a cozy seating area. Minutes later, a tall figure emerged from a nearby office. It was him, the same man from the diner, only now he looked different. Dressed in a sharp suit, he exuded confidence and authority. Yet when he saw her, his expression softened. "You came," he said, extending a hand. His voice was calm, reassuring. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," she admitted, shaking his hand tentatively. "To be honest, I still don't know why you're doing this." He gestured for her to follow him into his office. Once they were seated, he leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Let me explain something. That night at the diner, I was at my lowest point. I'd lost not just my wallet, but also my sense of direction. And then you showed up. You, a complete stranger, offered me kindness without expecting anything in return. That meant more to me than you'll ever know." She blinked, surprised by his words. "I didn't do anything special. Just gave you a muffin." "It wasn't just the muffin," he said firmly. "It was the way you treated me, with dignity and compassion. You reminded me of what's important in life. So I want to repay you. Not with money, because I think you're worth more than that, with opportunity." Her mouth fell open. "Opportunity?" What did he mean? Before she could ask, he continued, "Tell me about your dreams. What do you want to achieve?" At first, she hesitated. Talking about her aspirations felt vulnerable, especially to someone like him, but something about his sincerity put her at ease. Slowly, she began to share her story, the bakery she'd always dreamed of opening, the struggles she faced daily, the sacrifices she made for her family. As she spoke, she noticed the way he listened, not just hearing her words, but truly understanding them. When she finished, he nodded thoughtfully. "I can help you make that dream a reality," he said simply. "If you're willing to work for it." Tears welled up in her eyes. For so long, she had carried the weight of her responsibilities alone, believing that no one would care about her struggles. But here was this man, offering her a lifeline, not out of pity, but out of gratitude. It was overwhelming, humbling, and exhilarating all at once. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank you doesn't feel like enough." "You don't have to thank me," he replied gently. "Just promise me one thing, that you'll stay true to yourself. That's all I ask." And with those words, her life began to change in ways she could never have imagined. The days that followed her meeting with the billionaire felt like a blur. She replayed their conversation over and over in her mind, trying to make sense of it all. He had listened to her story, her struggles, her dreams, with genuine interest, as though she were someone important. And then he offered her something she never thought possible, a chance to turn her dream into reality. It wasn't just about money. It was about belief. He believed in her, even when she struggled to believe in herself. But despite the excitement bubbling inside her, doubts crept in too. Who was she to deserve such generosity? Was she really ready for this kind of opportunity? What if she failed? These questions haunted her as she lay awake at night staring at the ceiling. Yet every time she thought about walking away, she remembered his words. Stay true to yourself. That simple phrase gave her strength. If he saw potential in her, maybe it was time she started seeing it in herself too. Over the next few weeks, things began to move quickly. The billionaire arranged meetings with architects, interior designers, and financial advisors. At first, she felt completely out of her depth. Sitting in rooms filled with professionals who spoke in jargon she barely understood made her feel small and insignificant. But the billionaire was always there, guiding her through each step. He encouraged her to speak up, to share her ideas, and to trust her instincts. You're the heart of this project, he told her one afternoon after a particularly overwhelming meeting. These people are here to help you bring your vision to life, but only you know what that vision truly is. His words stuck with her. Slowly, she began to find her voice. She started sketching out designs for the bakery on scraps of paper during her breaks at Joe's Diner. She imagined cozy wooden tables, shelves lined with fresh bread, and a counter displaying colorful pastries. She wanted it to feel warm and inviting, like a place where people could escape the chaos of the city, even if just for a little while. As the plans took shape, so did her confidence. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream big. Maybe this bakery wouldn't just be a way to support her family. It could become a community hub, a place where people came together to share laughter and stories. The thought filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. Of course, not everything went smoothly. There were setbacks along the way, delays in construction, disagreements with contractors, and moments when she wondered if she'd bitten off more than she could chew. One particularly tough day stood out. A shipment of custom-made tiles for the bakery's walls arrived cracked and unusable. When she called the supplier to complain, they refused to take responsibility, leaving her frustrated and defeated. She sat on the floor of the unfinished bakery, surrounded by paint cans and tools, tears streaming down her face. All the stress and pressure finally caught up with her. It felt like the universe was conspiring against her, reminding her that she didn't belong in this world of entrepreneurship and success. That's when the billionaire showed up unexpectedly. He must have sensed something was wrong because he walked in without calling ahead. Seeing her sitting there, broken and overwhelmed, he didn't say anything at first. Instead, he crouched down beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. I know it feels impossible right now, he said softly. But remember why you started this journey. You didn't do it for fancy tiles or perfect designs. You did it because you wanted to create something meaningful. His words struck a chord deep within her. He was right. This bakery wasn't about perfection. It was about passion. Taking a deep breath, she wiped her tears and stood up. Together, they figured out a solution for the tiles, opting for a simpler design that still captured the cozy vibe she envisioned. By the end of the day, she felt lighter, reminded once again of why she had embarked on this path. As the months passed, the bakery slowly came to life. Walls were painted, ovens installed, and shelves stocked with ingredients. Each milestone brought her closer to the finish line, but it also brought new challenges. Marketing, for instance, was a whole different ballgame. She had no idea how to attract customers or build a brand. Again, the billionaire stepped in, connecting her with experts who taught her the basics of social media, advertising, and customer engagement. One evening, as they reviewed the final touches before the grand opening, he turned to her with a proud smile. You've come so far, he said. Do you realize that? She shook her head, laughing nervously. I still can't believe any of this is real. Sometimes I wake up thinking it's all a dream. It's real, he assured her. And you earned it. Not because I gave you a chance, but because you worked hard and stayed true to who you are. His words meant the world to her. They weren't just empty compliments. They were reminders of how far she'd come since that rainy night at the diner. Back then, she had been surviving, barely keeping her head above water. Now, she was thriving, building something she could be proud of. The night before the grand opening, she couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts of what the next day would bring. Would people like the bakery? Would they understand the love and care that went into every detail? She knew it wouldn't be easy, success rarely was, but she was ready to face whatever came her way. Early the next morning, she arrived at the bakery before sunrise. The air smelled of freshly baked bread and sweet pastries, filling her with a sense of accomplishment. As she unlocked the door and flipped the sign to open, she felt a surge of gratitude for the billionaire who had believed in her, for her family who had supported her, and for herself for never giving up. By mid-morning, the bakery was bustling with customers. Neighbors stopped by to check out the new spot, friends brought friends, and soon the line stretched out the door. People complimented the cozy atmosphere, raved about the food, and thanked her for creating such a welcoming space. Watching them enjoy her creations filled her with joy unlike anything she'd ever experienced. That evening, as she locked up the bakery and headed home, she realized something profound. This journey wasn't just about achieving a dream, it was about discovering who she was along the way. She had faced fears, overcome obstacles, and learned to trust herself. And while the road ahead would undoubtedly have its ups and downs, she knew she was stronger than she had ever imagined. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. Her act of kindness that rainy night at the diner had set off a chain reaction, not just in her own life, but in the lives of those around her. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, exhausted but happy, she couldn't wait to see what the future held. The bakery quickly became the talk of the neighborhood. Word spread like wildfire about the cozy little spot with warm lighting, friendly service, and food that tasted like home. People came not just for the pastries but for the atmosphere, the kind of place where you could sit for hours sipping coffee, chatting with friends, or simply watching the world go by outside the large windows. It wasn't long before the lines grew longer, and regular customers started greeting her by name when they walked in. But success didn't come without its challenges. Running a business was harder than she ever imagined. There were mornings when the ovens broke down right as the first batch of bread was supposed to go in. There were days when suppliers delivered the wrong ingredients, leaving her scrambling to adjust recipes at the last minute. And there were nights when she stayed late cleaning up after closing time, too tired to even think about going home. Yet, through it all, she reminded herself of one thing. This was hers. Every challenge, every victory, it belonged to her. The billionaire continued to play an important role in her journey, though his involvement shifted over time. At first, he was hands-on, helping her navigate the complexities of entrepreneurship. But as she gained confidence and skills, he stepped back, letting her take the reins. Still, he checked in regularly, asking how things were going and offering advice when needed. Their relationship evolved into something deeper, a friendship built on mutual respect and trust. One day, during one of their casual meetings over coffee at the bakery, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "You're doing incredible," he said. "I'm proud of you." She laughed nervously, brushing off the compliment. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You gave me the chance I needed." He shook his head firmly. "No, I didn't give you anything you didn't already have inside you. All I did was point you in the right direction. The rest is all you." His words stayed with her long after their conversation ended. They weren't just encouraging, they were empowering. For so much of her life, she had doubted herself, believing she wasn't smart enough, strong enough, or capable enough to achieve her dreams. But now, standing behind the counter of her thriving bakery, she realized those doubts had been lies she told herself. She was capable. She always had been. As the weeks turned into months, the bakery's popularity grew beyond the neighborhood. Food bloggers and local influencers began stopping by, snapping photos of the pastries and sharing glowing reviews online. One viral post in particular sent a surge of new customers flooding in. Suddenly, the bakery wasn't just a hidden gem, it was becoming a destination. With increased visibility came attention she hadn't anticipated. Some people questioned her sudden rise to success, whispering that she must have used the billionaire's connections unfairly. Others accused her of being a charity case, implying that her achievements weren't entirely her own. Reading these comments stung, especially because she knew how hard she had worked to get here. But instead of letting negativity bring her down, she decided to prove them wrong. She threw herself into improving the bakery even further. She experimented with new recipes, introducing seasonal specials that kept customers coming back for more. She hosted community events, like free baking workshops for kids and charity fundraisers for local causes. Slowly but surely, she built a reputation not just as a business owner but as someone who cared deeply about her community. Her efforts paid off. Not only did the negative voices fade, but people started seeing her as an inspiration. Strangers approached her at the bakery, thanking her for showing them what was possible with hard work and determination. A young mother once hugged her after a workshop saying, "Watching you chase your dream makes me believe I can do it too." Moments like these reminded her why she had started this journey in the first place. It wasn't about fame or money. It was about making a difference, however small. Whether it was through a loaf of bread or a kind word, she wanted to leave the world a little brighter than she found it. Meanwhile, her friendship with the billionaire deepened, though their lives were vastly different. His filled with board, meetings, and international deals. Hers centered around flour and frosting. They shared a bond rooted in authenticity. He often stopped by the bakery unannounced, sometimes bringing colleagues or friends along. On quieter days, they'd sit together in a corner booth, talking about everything from business strategies to personal struggles. Through these conversations, she learned more about him, not just as a billionaire, but as a person. Beneath the polished suits and confident demeanor was someone who carried his own burdens. He spoke openly about the loneliness that came with wealth and power, admitting that he often felt disconnected from the world around him. Listening to him, she realized that despite their differences, they weren't so unlike each other after all. Both of them had faced hardships, both had moments of doubt, and both were searching for meaning in their lives. Their connection inspired her to think bigger. By the end of the first year, she had expanded the bakery to 2 additional locations across the city. Each one reflected her original vision, warm, welcoming spaces designed to bring people together. With the billionaire's guidance, she also started mentoring aspiring entrepreneurs, sharing the lessons she had learned along the way. It was her way of paying forward the kindness that had changed her life. Despite her growing success, she remained grounded. She still worked long hours, rolling up her sleeves alongside her staff during busy shifts. She made sure to visit her mom and sibling regularly, cherishing the moments they spent together. And she never forgot where she came from, the tiny diner where it all began. One evening, as she stood in the kitchen of her flagship bakery, kneading dough and listening to the hum of activity around her, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. How far she had come since that rainy night at Joe's diner. Back then, she had been surviving, barely holding on. Now she was thriving, building a life filled with purpose and joy. Yet she knew this was only part of the story. Success wasn't the end goal, it was a stepping stone. As she looked around the bustling bakery, she felt a spark of excitement for what lay ahead. This was just the beginning, and somewhere in the distance the billionaire smiled, knowing he had played a role in turning someone else's dreams into reality. By the second year, the bakery had become more than just a business. It was a movement. People didn't just come for the food, they came for the experience. The cozy atmosphere, the smell of freshly baked bread, and the sense of belonging it offered made it a favorite spot for families, students, and professionals alike. What started as a dream in a small diner had grown into something much bigger, a chain of 3 bakeries spread across different parts of the city, each one carrying the same warmth and charm as the original. But with growth came new challenges. Managing multiple locations meant juggling schedules, hiring and training staff, dealing with suppliers, and ensuring quality remained consistent. It wasn't easy, but she tackled every obstacle head-on. Her mornings began earlier now, often Starting before sunrise as she traveled between stores to check on operations, she spent hours tasting recipes, tweaking them until they were perfect. Evenings were reserved for paperwork and planning, leaving little time for herself. Yet despite the exhaustion, she found joy in the chaos. Every challenge overcome felt like another step forward. The billionaire continued to be a steady presence in her life, though his role evolved as she gained confidence. He transitioned from being her mentor to becoming her cheerleader, always ready with advice when she needed it, but never overstepping. Their conversations became less about business and more about life, about finding balance, staying grounded, and remembering why they did what they did. One evening, after closing up the flagship bakery, she sat down with him at a corner table. The place was quiet now, the only sound coming from the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She leaned back in her chair, letting out a tired sigh. "It's crazy how fast everything has happened," she said, looking around the room. "Sometimes I feel like I'm running to keep up." He nodded thoughtfully, sipping his coffee. "Growth can be overwhelming, but you're handling it well. Better than most people would." She smiled faintly, appreciating the compliment, but still feeling unsure. "Do you ever worry that I'm moving too quickly? That maybe I should slow down a bit?" He paused, considering her question. "There's no right or wrong pace," he said finally. "What matters is that you stay true to yourself. As long as your values guide you, you'll be okay." His words resonated deeply. In the whirlwind of success, it was easy to lose sight of what truly mattered. She realized that while expanding the business was exciting, it wasn't the most important thing. What mattered was the impact she was making, the smiles on customers' faces, the opportunities she created for her employees, and the connection she fostered within the community. With that in mind, she decided to take a step back and focus on giving back. She launched a program called Bake for Good, where a portion of the profits from each bakery went toward supporting local charities. She also partnered with schools to teach kids basic baking skills, hoping to inspire the next generation of dreamers. These initiatives weren't just about doing good. They were about staying connected to her roots and reminding herself why she started this journey in the first place. As the months passed, the bakery's reputation continued to grow. Food critics raved about her creations, calling them a celebration of simplicity and flavor. Local newspapers featured her story, highlighting not just her success, but her commitment to community service. People began referring to her as the baker who changed the neighborhood, a title that made her blush every time she heard it. Yet, not everyone was supportive. Some skeptics accused her of using the billionaire's influence to rise to fame, while others dismissed her efforts as mere publicity stunts. At first, the criticism hurt. She worked hard to earn her success, and hearing people dismiss it as luck or privilege was frustrating. But instead of lashing out, she chose to let her actions speak for themselves. She doubled down on her charitable work, proving that her intentions were genuine. Slowly, the negativity faded, replaced by admiration and respect. Her relationship with the billionaire also faced scrutiny. Rumors swirled about the nature of their friendship, with some speculating that there was more to it than met the eye. Both of them laughed it off, knowing the truth was far simpler. They cared about each other deeply, but their bond was built on mutual respect and shared values, not romance. Rather than letting the gossip affect them, they embraced it as part of the journey. After all, success often came with unwanted attention. Despite the challenges, the bakery thrived. By the end of the second year, she had opened a fourth location, this one in a bustling downtown area. It was her biggest venture, yet complete with a larger kitchen, expanded seating, and even a small outdoor patio. On opening day, the line stretched down the block, filled with eager customers eager to try her latest creations. Watching the crowd gather, she felt a surge of pride, not just for herself, but for everyone who had helped make this possible. That night, as she stood outside the new bakery watching the lights twinkle against the evening sky, the billionaire joined her. "You've done amazing things," he said quietly. "I hope you know that." She turned to look at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." He shook his head, smiling softly. "You give me too much credit. All I did was remind you of what you already knew. You're stronger than you think." They stood there in comfortable silence, reflecting on how far they'd both come. For her, the journey had been transformative. She had gone from a struggling waitress trying to make ends meet to a successful entrepreneur inspiring others to chase their dreams. For him, meeting her had reignited a passion for helping others, reminding him of the power of kindness and connection. As the days turned into weeks, she began thinking about the future. The bakery was thriving, but she wanted to do more. Inspired by the billionaire's generosity, she decided to create a foundation aimed at supporting struggling single parents and young entrepreneurs. The idea came to her late one night as she lay awake thinking about her own journey. She remembered the countless times she had felt alone and overwhelmed, wishing someone would offer a helping hand. Now, she had the resources to be that person for others. When she pitched the idea to the billionaire, he immediately supported it. Together, they developed a plan to provide grants, mentorship programs, and networking opportunities for those in need. It was their way of paying forward the kindness that had brought them together. Launching the foundation marked a new chapter in her life. It wasn't just about baking anymore. It was about creating opportunities for others to succeed. She hosted fundraising events, invited guest speakers to share their stories, and collaborated with local organizations to maximize impact. Each initiative reinforced her belief that success wasn't measured by wealth or fame, but by the lives you touched along the way. Looking back on everything she had achieved, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Life hadn't been easy, but every hardship had prepared her for this moment. She had built something meaningful, not just for herself, but for her family, her community, and the countless strangers whose lives she had touched. And through it, all the billionaire remained by her side, cheering her on and reminding her to stay humble. Their friendship had transformed both of their lives, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could lead to the greatest outcomes. As she locked up the bakery one evening, exhausted but content, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. This journey had taught her so much, not just about running a business, but about resilience, compassion, and the power of believing in yourself. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to face it head on, because for the first time in her life, she truly believed she could handle anything. And somewhere in the distance, the billionaire smiled, knowing he had played a part in turning someone else's dreams into reality. The third year of the bakery's journey brought a mix of challenges and triumphs, but it was also the year when everything began to feel truly meaningful. The foundation she had started with the billionaire was now in full swing, helping single parents and young entrepreneurs get back on their feet. Every grant awarded, every success story shared, reminded her of why she had embarked on this path in the first place. It wasn't about building an empire. It was about making life a little easier for people who needed it most. One morning, as she unlocked the doors of her flagship bakery, she found a handwritten note taped to the glass. It read, "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. Your foundation gave me hope again." There was no signature, just those heartfelt words scribbled in shaky handwriting. She stood there for a moment, clutching the note, tears welling up in her eyes. This was what mattered, the quiet moments that reminded her of the impact she was making. As the months passed, stories like this poured in. A single mom opened her own daycare center after receiving financial support from the foundation. A college dropout launched a small tech startup that gained traction within months. Another recipient started a community garden project, bringing fresh produce to neighborhoods that lacked access to healthy food. Each story was unique, yet they all shared one common thread. They were proof that kindness could change lives. The foundation's work didn't go unnoticed. Local news outlets featured segments on its initiatives, highlighting how it was transforming lives across the city. People began volunteering their time and resources, eager to contribute to the cause. What had started as a small idea between two friends had grown into something much bigger, a movement fueled by compassion and determination. But running both the bakery and the foundation wasn't easy. Some days felt like an endless juggling act. Between managing staff, overseeing expansion plans, attending board meetings for the foundation, and ensuring quality control at every location, she often found herself stretched thin. There were mornings when she woke up exhausted, wondering if she was taking on too much. Yet every time doubt crept in, she remembered the faces of the people she was helping. That reminder kept her going, even on the hardest days. Her friendship with the billionaire remained a cornerstone of her journey. Though their lives continued to move in different directions, with him traveling for business and her focused on growing her ventures, they stayed connected through regular calls and occasional visits. Their conversations became less about strategy and more about reflection. They talked about the highs and lows of their respective journeys, sharing lessons learned along the way. One evening, during one of his rare visits to the city, they met at the original bakery. Sitting in the same corner booth where they had shared countless discussions, he looked around thoughtfully. "Do you ever stop and think about how far you've come?" he asked, stirring his coffee slowly. She laughed softly, glancing around the cozy space. "Sometimes, but honestly, I try not to dwell on it too much. If I do, I might start doubting myself again." He chuckled, nodding in agreement. "Fair enough. Still, it's worth acknowledging. You've built something remarkable. Not just the bakery or the foundation, but the way you've inspired others." Her cheeks flushed at the compliment. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You opened doors I never knew existed. And you walked through them," he countered gently. "Don't forget that. All I did was give you a push. Everything else is because of your hard work." His words lingered in her mind long after their conversation ended. It was true. She had worked tirelessly to get here, overcoming obstacles and pushing past fear, but none of it would have been possible without the chain reaction sparked by that rainy night at Joe's diner. That simple act of kindness had set off a ripple effect, touching countless lives, including her own. By the end of the third year, the bakery had expanded to 5 locations, each one thriving and beloved by its community. The foundation had helped over 100 individuals and families achieve their dreams, creating a ripple effect of positivity throughout the city. Her name became synonymous with resilience and generosity, inspiring others to pay it forward, in their own ways. Yet despite all the success, she remained grounded. She still rolled up her sleeves and worked alongside her staff during busy shifts, still visited her mom and sibling regularly, and still found joy in the little things, like watching customers laugh over cups of coffee or seeing kids light up when they bit into a freshly baked cookie. One crisp autumn morning, as she prepared to open the flagship bakery, she took a moment to stand outside and soak in the scene. The sun cast golden rays over the street, illuminating the colorful leaves scattered across the sidewalk. Inside, the aroma of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, mingling with the sound of chatter and laughter. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to appreciate how far she'd come. This journey hadn't been easy. There had been sleepless nights, moments of self-doubt, and days when giving up seemed like the only option. But through it all, she had held on to one truth: kindness matters. Whether it was offering a stranger a muffin on a rainy night or mentoring someone trying to rebuild their life, every act of compassion had the power to create change. As she stepped inside and flipped the sign to open, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. This wasn't the end of her story, it was just another chapter. Ahead lay new challenges, new opportunities, and new ways to make a difference, and she was ready for whatever came next. Later that day, as the bakery buzzed with activity, she received a text from the billionaire. It was short but meaningful. "Proud of you. Keep shining." She smiled, tucking her phone into her apron pocket. Somewhere in the distance, he smiled too, knowing that their paths crossing had led to something extraordinary. Together they had proven that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark incredible change. And so, life went on. For her, for him, and for everyone whose lives they had touched. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment of compassion to set off a chain reaction that changes the world.